Again, this is your 5-8 Healthwise Clinical Decision Support. My name is Daniel Burgos. I'll be your instructor. In this session, we're going to cover the end user functionality that has to do with the Healthwise application. Just previously, we've seen how to install it. Now we're going in and we're going to take a look at how the actual application works. So there are some options here, some things that we're going to take a look at. Let's just stay in PowerPoint for right now. Obviously, we're going to cover the 5-8 Healthwise and clinical decision support information. Our objective, new 5.8 education options for Healthwise. All right? We have 4 different options. You have your internal option, your external option, you have your clinical decision support, and your external provider reference. Each one means something different. The first one that we have there is your internal patient education. Your internal patient education is your Healthwise application. And if installed the patient education, that means that that's exactly what you're using, is that internal patient education piece. External. The external piece of it is basically for those clients that have purchased an external patient education application and they want to utilize it. As long as it is Health Language Inc., HL7 info standard button option capable, it could utilize it. And I'll explain what that actually means here a little bit later. We'll talk about that. The clinical aspect, or your clinical decision support. From an internal perspective, our clinical decision support is built into our Healthwise application. Healthwise does support and is one of the leaders in the H7 info standard option. So you have that capability within our internal services. The clinical piece here is if somebody had purchased an external clinical decision support system. Now, clinical decision support is that patient education or educational tool that is utilized by a provider to help them decide what the diagnosis is for that particular patient. And lastly is your external provider reference. External provider reference is essentially what we had for the medication module. In the medication module, we had an external provider reference, and it was to assist the provider in bringing the information about the actual medication. It's just a website or connected to a website, and that's all that is. We basically expanded that external provider reference not only from the medication module, but to the problems module, procedures, all allergies, all the other modules that we have out there. So we'll take a look at that and see exactly what that has to offer. Healthwise installation overview, we kind of already covered that in the previous or before this, so we've seen that already, and your Healthwise overview setup and the browser. So we'll talk about all of that as we go on. All right. So, education and clinical decision support. And this is getting into what we just talked about, the internal patient educational material that is loaded onto the server versus on the internet for most part. Healthwise uses the following modules: the problems and procedures, and you can right-click and pull that data in. The MODF is still utilized as the internal patient education for the medication module, and we will see that once we get into the module here. External patient education, HL7 info button standard, is utilized for the orders and the allergies. So external patient education that is connected connected can be utilized for those two options as well. Clinical decision support, again, HL7 info standard, and it should say that up at the top for the internal patient education. We just added it, I apologize. But clinical decision support is, again, a third-party application that is installed. I'll show you where you can install it. We don't have any that we're going to show or install, but I will talk about it a little bit when we get into the setup process. As provider references, again, is just a URL. It does not meet the HL7 info button standard. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. So maybe asking yourself, what is the info button standard? Health is the leader in developing the HL7 info button standard. It's the nickname for the Health Level 7 National Context-Aware Knowledge Retrieval Standard. This standard has already been adopted and implemented for clinical decision support, and Healthwise pioneered efforts to enable you to use it to meet meaningful use requirements, widely adopted since 2007. The button lets you use the EHR, electronic health record, to deliver a set of standardized information about the patient, the provider, and what happens during the specific care encounter or moment in care. Our application could then pull from a set of appropriate information for that particular use case. It gives you the link of where we found this information. Basically, what it's doing is it's taking discrete data from our EHR and come up with options for the end user to deliver to the actual patient. So if the patient was a 26-year-old male and they're having issues with acne, that you're looking up, well, the system will automatically go in and pull up recommendations for patient education for that particular patient, driven from their gender, their age, their actual problem or ailment, and it'll promote specific patient education materials to deliver to that patient. We'll see this working here. Here's the info button standard for you HL7 gurus. You can see exactly what's going on here. It's basically inserting specific data for hypertensive disorder and heart failure, and just pulling in certain information based off of that data. Our Healthwise, we have patient education, we have provider education. As I mentioned to you several times, there's 4 different options that we have. The first two is internal patient education and external patient education. Those two, patient education is your Healthwise. External patient education is, again, third party, meaning somebody purchased it from somewhere else. But those two are the patient education piece. Then we have the provider education, that clinical decision support. Now, for us in Healthwise or internally, we have the clinical decision support embedded within the actual patient education. So there's an external link that will allow them to navigate out to the Healthwise website and actually pull up additional information aside from the patient education materials. So, of course, we have the clinical decision support for from an external perspective. So if the has purchased a third-party vendor, we could apply it and still utilize it from within NextGen. Launch browser versus context-specific patient education. So in the previous versions of Healthwise, you were able to launch Healthwise by going to File, Patient Education, once it was set up. But when you got into the Healthwise application, you strictly had to browse or dig for your information. As I mentioned to you with the button option, we have the capability of pulling context-specific patient education based off of discrete data from the patient's chart. Again, pulling that information directly out, recommended recommending specific patient education for said patient. Healthwise Installation, we've already gone through. These are just some breakdowns of what you need to be aware of. You want to go in, confirm the licensing. You want to check the Microsoft Net framework for, set up the root folders, download the Healthwise content from the Customer Resource Center, set up the patient education pathways and universal preferences, zip the package to the next-gen root directory, run patient education content install wizard, manually update patient education triggers if necessary. All right, so again, that's just a quick down and dirty version or checklist of what you need to do in order to install. Again, I recommend utilizing the documentation that comes with the install. If you are an internal employee, we do have that additional document, Health for Trainers, or Install Healthwise for Trainers document that we demonstrated earlier. Universal preferences and what you should expect. Local patient education, where the information is coming from. You'll see the patient education DSN, nothing there. Patient documents path, I'm not sure if we actually filled that out. We'll have to take a look and make sure that we have that set. What that patient documents path is it allows us to save the document directly into the patient's chart. So if we went in and found a patient education piece or material, we'd be able to go in and save it directly to the chart. Print patient name allows you to save the patient's name directly to the document. Remote patient education files just mirror your local patient education files, but it's utilized if you're utilizing an FTP of some sort. Search term mapping file. Basically, our help files mentioned not to touch those, or our documentation mentioned not to touch those. Your search URL, this is for that additional information for your provider. Allows you to make sure that you have the right one. When I say the right one, if you're using Catholic Health, make sure that it's pointing to the Catholic Health URL. If you're dealing with the regular language, multi-language value, then make sure that it is connected to that. Use legacy mapping, set to false. If it was set to true, it would indicate that you were utilizing the McKesson application. Installation, things you may see, certain mapping values, trying to get in and map that information. If you have information that's pulling from a template, it allows you to override it. All right. So I think this is a good point to stop with the PowerPoint and get and share desktop and get into the application live. All right. Do want to check my universal preferences real quick. For some, I think I forgot to put that, but I could be mistaken. And in any ways to see. And universal preferences, patient education. Oh, I did miss it. I apologize. Patient document path. Your patient document path will allow you to save your to actual patient's chart. So all you need is a storage location, essentially. And this is where that Healthwise saved folder that we created during the install comes into play. Oh. And Healthwise saved. There we go. Once you have that, you'll be all set. So we're going to go into EHR. Before we actually get into the patient education, let's take a look at some of the setup options that you may need to utilize in order order to set this up. While opening this up, we'll hop back into System Admin. So in System Admin, there are some rights here. So the user level, your preference rights for patient education. Now you can see that piece there. You have practice rights. Folks, give me 1 second. Nope, at the top. Support. So here's your clinical decision support. Again, this is your provider allowing them to see this information on these particular values. So you'll see there yes and no. To the group level, you'll see those same clinical decision support values. So I just wanted to point out that you do have those turned on if to utilize the clinical decision support from a system admin perspective. All right. In file maintenance, there's also some options, and this has to do with the setup of the external values. The internal values are automatically installed via the Healthwise install. But if you wanted to set up some of those external references that I mentioned, you do it in file maintenance part, with exception of the. So here, you'll go into file maintenance, your practice, your enterprise, go into master file under EHR, and you'll then select your practices. Under practices, select your desired practice off to the left-hand side. Oh, excuse me. Then you'll come on down and select your preferences. Off to the left-hand side, once this launches, you'll see your preference list. And you may be looking for Healthwise or clinical decision support or patient education. It's not called any of the above. It's called resources. So if you click on your resources, you'll see these windows here. You see here your external patient education, clinical decision support, your external provider reference. These are all third-party vendors that you can utilize. So here, again, patient education means that somebody has purchased an external patient education utility and they have their URL there. We're using Medline Plus because it's free, and that's the one that connects directly into it. Clinical decision support, again, same thing. And you'll see that we have this capability for diagnosis and problems. For your procedures. And if you scroll down, you'll notice that some of them don't have an external provider reference. Just the simple fact that I couldn't come up with one and nobody's been able to give me one. This is just a www type of URL. And for the medication, this Hippocrates, where some people would use Hippocrates, your orders module, again, you can go on down and external reference. The only time you're going to need to do this is if you're setting up that external provider reference or a third-party external service. Otherwise, it's automatically, when you run your Healthwise, it's going to automatically be installed initially. So to keep in mind, it is there. EHR. EHR, their tools and preferences. You'll see under your, I forget where it is. It's references. That would help, huh? Under references, you could actually set up your references. This is the same way as the medication module was for Hippocrates. If you put anything in there, it doesn't matter. www.nextgen.com will work. So I apply that and we'll be able to see it. Now, those that are used to filling that out under the medications tab, it's there. It's just a shared value across from the medications to references. No big deal there. Just want you to know that you do have that capability of inputting the external reference, provider reference at any given point. How do you get to your patient education utility? All right, we've done all this work on setting it up and talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. I'm sure by now you just want to see it. All right, so the first thing is that you still can get to it from File, Page Education. All right, so that's one way of getting into it. The only thing is if you get into it this way, you're digging still. You're still going in and digging for what information it is that you wanted. Now here, we were talking about acne. You pull that information up, you'll be able to see it, right? Which is fine. You could still utilize the workflow if that's the workflow that you're familiar with. But you don't necessarily have to do it that way. We have other avenues, and we'll come back and forth a couple times so you could see it. But we have other avenues of navigating through the patient education, or navigating to the patient education, so to speak. So we could do it for Healthwise from the diagnosis module. So from here in your diagnosis module, you'll be able to click on your diagnosis module. All right. And within your diagnosis module, you'll now see that if I right-click down, and I'll see the resources. Off to the right there, you'll see the 4 different resources that we've mentioned several times over. Internal patient education. This is yours. This is your next-gen Healthwise patient education that you just installed. External patient education, third party, somebody paid for it. Clinical decision support, third party, somebody paid for it. External provider reference is a just web link to take you out to a website where you find information, right? And this one's taking you to Pane.gov. Right. So again, keep that in mind, what values are for. If you did utilize the internal patient education, also notice that you can do it from here under resources, click on the internal patient education, then launch the internal patient education, pull in discrete data, utilizing the information that we just mentioned, and gives recommendations based upon the age, gender, the value that we were currently on. If you recall, we were just on asthma. So it's given us multiple options for us to automatically deliver patient education to your patients. Great tool. Functionality is impeccable here. So you come in, if you weren't interested in that, or if you wanted to change something, you come in and click on the discrete data and depict what it is that you want to search by. So right now we're just going off of terms because I was actually in, minimize this, I was actually in the diagnosis under SNOMED. So it was using the actual term for pull that information in. As you can see, I could still scroll through it. Down below, you could see the different languages. So if I needed to see it in Spanish, or if I needed to sing it in English, I could see those values. There are other languages that are installed with this. This example just doesn't have a ton, but there we go. Attack after your visit. So here you can see that there's actually multiple languages that we could deal with, all right, or that you can select. And you don't have to go all the way out to do anything. It's right there for you. Now, there are some options here. You have a couple different windows that you're actually looking at right now. You have this window off to the left-hand side, search window. All right, so you could go in, or excuse me, your I apologize. But you have this window here. This is basically allowing you to dig deeper into the actual patient education. Up here is your advanced search capabilities. Again, you could just type the information in, run search, or you go ahead and change the discrete data and run your search. and your display view here. Within each one of these windows, you have your own options. As I mentioned, you could change the language of what it is that you're looking for. You could still dig into those particular folders. Over at the top right, you'll have this little knowledge base. This is your clinical decision support from within Healthwise. So if you needed more data, you go on that. It'll actually take us out to the website. Give us asthma in teens and adults. I could then open that up and look for more information. So here, I actually go in, and these are symptoms, what is that I'm looking for as a provider that I would need to utilize different tests that I may want to run and different things that I may want to do. It gives me all that clinical decision support from up there. If multiple pages, this will go back, this will go forward. If I needed to print it, I would be able to print it. Now going back into the actual value here, if you note down at the bottom, I could select a specific value, I could send it to Patient Portal, I could save it to my encounter. These do count towards your meaningful use requirements, or I could cancel. So it's going to save to encounter. It's give me a little window attack after your visit. What do you want to save it as? If I send it to Patient Portal, it would give me the same exact window. All right, but it would be going to the Patient Portal. I'm not connected to the Patient Portal via this database, but understand that it does the same thing. There I click Save. That value directly into my patient's chart. So you could look over to the right-hand side, and you could see that particular value there and information. Huge enhancement, making it very functional. Like I said, it does meet the use requirements. So let's see what else we could look at. So we just did the from SOAP. I can close that. That's SOAP. I can go into my billing list. If I look for, let's go with broken hand. I go into my resources. Internal is your Healthwise. Have it. All right. How do you care for a broken hand? And these are the values that came up based off of the criteria that I put in. All right. So again, is your problems and your diagnosis, so your SOAP and your billing codes, we've seen searches by them. If I go into my medication module, under medication module, sources, but I mentioned to you the monograph is the internal educational piece. That's what's considered the internal educational piece. I'm going to actually print it, but you do see the third-party values that are still there. I believe this one we put nextgen.com. But as you can see, it's not a 8.7 standard option. It's just going to pull open that website regardless of what it is. X sources, our orders module, and our allergies. So if we go to our allergies, your resource is here, but if you highlight one of them and you click, you'll see resources, and all you're going to see is external clinical and external provider reference. Why is this grayed out? Because we never put anything in for it. So if you click on it, it'll take us to whatever third-party value that we had in there, and it didn't like whatever I just did. I didn't like that particular value. Let's see if any of these other ones will work. No. The website saying it doesn't like those values. The code's not available for it. But understand that would be that third party. Our internal, we don't have anything that corresponds with that. The last one was the orders. Same here, your orders. If you right-click, you can go to resources, and you could look at external resources. So here's your Medline Plus, and it's going to be the same one for clinical decision support because that's the same email. Again, that's third-party software. Essentially, for us, where you're going to run your patient education from is your problems module. Your problem module where you're going to have your diagnosis and procedures, and then you have your monograph for the medications. For procedures. I think so. First of all, we have the capability, of pulling in data. It doesn't like that particular code. And I got to do something with if that one will work. No. The idea, it works all the same. And if I were to go back in and utilize the patient education tool from this section, and you have your browse pane here, your search engine at the top, your display window here, so you could actually type in whatever it is that you were essentially looking for. So if it was you search for it. That again, you have the capability of expanding the data up at the top, the discrete data that's being pulled in, and you could change it. You change it during this search. And here, if you know what is that you're looking for, it may be. We can go with that. Or rheumatology. We'll say middle-aged adults. Okay, so you could pull in whatever it is that you're looking for and still have the capability of saving that information directly to your chart. Clinical decision support, just want to keep keep it in the back of your mind there that it is under that knowledge base. Or if you scroll down, you'll see down here, you can learn more. You can click on that, and it'll automatically launch more information for that the same way as if you would click that icon up at the top. You'll see those icons up here, and it'll pull open that information for you, whatever it is that you were looking for. And there's, all right. You can again go back into oops. You'll see that information here. Again, this is more of a digging application. You're basically going in and digging for whatever it is that you're looking for. This is utilizing the information coming from directly within the application. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and take a look at that we just talked about. So I'll go through this somewhat quick. From the nav bar with templates, still an option for browsing. I'm not sure I'm tracking that question. I apologize. If you could elaborate, into EHR real quick. Give me a second. So if you're talking about from here, from file, patient education, or where you're talking about. So, all right, we'll talk about it. We'll go through the PowerPoint. You shoot me another chat message there, and we'll continue on. Your practice preferences, we talked about that. The different requirements, your user preferences, how you navigate out to it. It really depends on where you're opening it up from, what you're going to get, what information is going to populate here for you. Search patient education pane, exactly what we're looking at. Your advanced search window, we talked that. The filter options that you can set. Here's a breakdown of what the different icons represent. Different search criteria, topics, age, gender, that sort of thing. Your pane, again, I couldn't remember the name of that. The images that you'll be able to see. Pane. And icons that you may see within that display pane and definitions. I've gone over all of these. Again, here, if you're saving it to the patient encounter, you just want to make sure that you have that up in your universal preferences for the saved folder. If you do not have that, you'll receive an error. Right? So I just want to point that out to you. Here's your example for the Send a Patient portal. Since I wasn't able to show it to you within the actual application, I just wanted to show you that you'll receive this little window first, and then you'll get the patient portal document export value, and you can send that off. With, again, going into the knowledge base for your clinical decision support. Clinical decision support looks like. Getting from each module. Nothing we haven't talked about yet, but it is a good point to bring up. The advanced auditing tracks events across the NextGen application, helping users meet requirements of HIPAA regulation and CCHIT certification. So that patient education, whether or not it was printed, viewed, saved, extra reference queried, provider reference queried, or clinical decision support, external reference queried. So that's saying whether you're doing it internal through Healthwise or you're using one of those extra sources, it's still being audited, it's still being tracked, and it's still going to meet the requirements that you're looking for. All right, so just keep that in mind when dealing with the advanced audit piece of it. We do have the capability of adding this into triggers. You have your search option, which is basically what do you want to search for. You could associate that with a field. You could associate each one of these with a field, essentially. Have them, the end user, pick and choose information. Now, when it comes down to type, a little blur there. This is title, ICD, or CPT. Terms, title, ICD, or CPT. Those are those discrete data values that were up at the top where I showed you that you could open it up or expand upon it and determine how you're searching for it. Term would be your SNOMED term. Your title would be the actual title of the article. Your ICD would be the actual ICD or diagnosis code, or your CPT would be the actual CPT code. In review, what we heard today was the Healthwise application within the EHR. We talked about the internal patient education utility, which is our Healthwise. We're no longer using McKesson. We talked about the external patient education, which would be a third-party vendor that the practice purchased and wanted to utilize. Again, HL7 info standard option is there. You have clinical decision support. Again, another external option for your end users or practices to take advantage of if they've purchased a clinical decision support system. Ours is embedded directly within the EHR and within Healthwise. You have the external provider reference. Your external provider reference will allow you to basically utilize a regular website. This is not HL7 Info Standard capable. About the Healthwise installation overview from a high level. We've seen exactly what you needed to do in order to install the Healthwise application. And we talked about the actual setup within our system, from system admin to file maintenance, and talked about the actual browser and how to navigate to it from each section of the application in EHR. It concludes my session.